My clock says 10 o'clock. The May 25, 2021 meeting of the Special Bombing Review Commission will come to order. I would like for us to stand, please, and ask Investigator Quinn to give our invocation, and I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance thereafter.
Lord, we pray this day that you will watch over this commission, be with us as we weigh heavy matters before the commission and the Metro Nashville government. We pray for our families and all of those loved ones that are in harm's way or are struggling with illness or other issues. Lord, we pray that our first responders are safe and are doing the work that you intended them to do. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please stand and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, let me reintroduce myself. I don't have a mask on, so now you know what I look like maybe. I'm Paul Summers. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. There's some members that I don't recognize today because they had masks on last time, so I'm going to ask everybody, not only for purposes of attendance, but also for purposes of recognition, to go around starting with our legal counsel and tell who you are and we'll know whether you're on the commission or not, and then we'll also be able to take roll that way. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Gross. I'm an attorney with the Metropolitan Government Department of Law.
Good morning. My name is LaShawn Oliver. I'm a captain with Vanderbilt University Public Safety.
Thank you, Captain.
My name is Margie Quinn, and I'm the CEO at End Slavery Tennessee and a member of the commission as the recording secretary.
Brenda Sanderson. I'm a downtown business owner, property owner, and downtown resident.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Gamble, Metro Council Member, District 3.
Good morning, Mario Avila. I am a faculty member and administrator at Vanderbilt University.
President Icon Entertainment, a downtown business, set of owners and property owners and past resident downtown.
Andres Martinez, Director of Policy and Communications at Conexión Américas and Chair of the Community Oversight Board.
Thank you very much. Now, we've got to definitely have a quorum. Mr. Holland, our Vice Chairman, called me yesterday and said he had an emergency about an hour and a half away. He regretted it. He sent his apologies, but he said he could not attend today. I said I understood. We've got 8 members of the commission here. We definitely have a quorum. Do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda? Motion made and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved, and you've got a copy of the agenda in front of you. I would also like to entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes submitted by our recording secretary, Ms. Quinn. Some of these minutes were sent to you in advance. I assume probably no changes to them. No significant changes?
No, I changed the spelling of a name. That was it.
Do I hear a motion that the minutes of the last meeting be approved?
Second.
Second. Moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. And don't let me forget to sign those, Investigator Quinn, and we'll have those filed if you would, please. Let me, before we get to the introduction of guests, let me share with you what I envision the committee to do in the future and some of the protocols that we'll use. Today, we will receive the first of several after-action reports from either governmental or non-governmental agencies. We will receive those because they were received by the fire chief and his office, and then we have developed a portal so that these after-action reports, which they're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of between 15 and 20, both governmental and non-governmental agencies, they will wind up trickling in to the office of the fire chief within the next several months. When they receive them, then Ms. Loney, who works in the fire chief's office and for Metro, she will then coordinate with our recording secretary, Ms. Quinn, and put those after-action reports on a portal. Then I suggest that this committee then be devised of not only governmental but also non-governmental committee members. We're about half and half. What I would recommend is that maybe with your help, and we could, Mike could do it now, could I have a show of hands of those of you who would like to be on a committee to study these after-action reports as they come in, whether they are, if you are on the governmental after-action report committee, then they will be governmental type entities like, say, the Metro Police or the FBI. If they are non-governmental entities such as AT&T, for example, then you would study those, particularly business type issues. But what I want to do is I want to, instead of us being deluged, say 4 months from now with 13 reports, I would like to start studying those. Then when those various committees then study the after-action reports, then they could report at the next meeting their conclusions. So, I would like to have a show of hands for those of you who would like to be on the non-governmental after-action report committee. 1, 2. Do I have 2 more? 3? Huh? Okay. Do you mind doing the non-governmental? That's fine. Ms. Sanderson said you're eminently qualified for the non-governmental.
He's qualified for both.
Actually, she said you're qualified for both, but a little bit more on the non-governmental. So, okay, that's the 4. You got those, Ms. Quinn?
I have Brenda, Andreas, Daryl, and who else?
All right.
Oh, all right. You wanna do government?
And those of you who would be on the governmental committee, which would include Vice Chairman Holland. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The balance would be on the governmental committee. So we've got 4 and 4. 4 on the non-governmental after-action report committee, 4 on the governmental after-action report committee. And then once these after-action reports come in, then they can be sent by the portal by Ms. Loney. You can send are you going to send the portal?
The portal is set up.
Okay.
It will be handled by Secretary Quinn.
Okay. And then she will then disseminate them to all of the members, and she and I might be able to, if it's not obvious whether or not it's a governmental or non-governmental committee, then we can decide that. Then at the next report, we'll hear a report from whether it's a governmental committee or non-governmental committee. That way we don't get deluged with a whole bunch in any 1 month. Chief, I know you've submitted us a timeline. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Bottom line is this: about how long would you suspect that these after-action reports would be coming in?
Well, first, let me just state, I think it's an excellent, Chairman, ideal with dividing them up. That way, everyone will have their share in it to keep this committee moving in a positive manner. And then to just clarify what you stated earlier, all the after-action reviews will go through the portal. That way, as far as the fire department and Office of Emergency Management Director and myself, I'll have nothing to do with that. So to keep me clean from it, because we'll be submitting ours as well. So the after-action review timeline, we've submitted that today. And then also, you will have the Office of Emergency Management's after-action review. So to answer your question, Chairman Summers, they should start coming in immediately. I would expect you guys to be completely busy from this point to the next meeting. And hopefully, as stated, once you guys receive the after-action review from whatever agency that it is, you will be able to review it, and if it answers all of your questions and it satisfies the committee, then that will be the end of it. And then if there's questions that need to be answered, each of these agencies understand that if you guys would like for them to come and actually present their after-action review, give an oral presentation, or come in to be questioned pertaining to that, to make something that may not be clear, they'll be willing to do that. So I think this way it'll be definitely clean and received very well.
These contributors, we'll get into you right now, if you don't mind. Chief, we appreciate you being here. William Swan, you're going to give us the timeline. You're going to give us, do you have draft reports today, or are you going to submit those to the portal?
Well, I think the only one that with your timeline that you've received a hard copy just for the sake of being committed to the promise that we made the last meeting. So you have a timeline that's in front of you, and that timeline will have all the agencies that are involved. Then also in front of you, you should have the Office of Emergency Management's after-action review. And I think it'd be very vital from our perspective just to be, again, committed to our promise to you. But I think to Chairman Summers' point, you guys would have already have reviewed this after-action report and been able to give a report, whomever from that committee would like to, and say that they're satisfied. But today, just for the sake of, again, being on point, we actually gave you a hard copy. So I think it'll be very fluent. Every agency has been contacted and is very much aware of the committee, the purpose of the committee, and they are all ready to participate and make sure that they satisfy the purpose of this committee.
I noticed in the paper this week that we had a report from, it apparently was from the Emergency Communications Board or something. I don't know if that's governmental or non-governmental. I don't know.
Well, they would be considered governmental, especially. They are, of course, our 911, which everything starts there. A tremendous group of men and women, and Director Martini, just a great director. But that, how that story took place, and let me make this point to everyone, and you and I had an open dialogue at the beginning of this meeting, but this was done prior to the commission being assembled, and all that basically was their board, the 911 board had just did their own findings, a report that was given by the director to his board. So the reporter actually took the minutes or took the interview from the board, from the director to the board, and did a story on it. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that did not come out. It came out, the story was done before the committee was done. So each agency understands that they would not give a story. It'd be like, me as a fire chief giving a story to the news media before I bring that to you guys, and that's not how it works. That was just done before, and I think they took that story and just ran it because they knew we were doing a after-action review, and this special bombing review committee was assembled. So that's how that happened. It was sort of inadvertently, and they ran a story on it.
has someone from your office or from Metro contacted all of these entities, whether they're governmental or non-governmental, that they should submit an after-action report, and to whom?
Yes, sir. They have been contacted by each agency that was involved with the bombing, and they understand that this after-action review will be actually submitted to you guys, the Special Bombing Review Commission Committee, and that way, I think when we first started, as I told you guys, I'm here to assist you in any way possible. I've been, of course, involved in many of these, and then been over the Office of Emergency Management, sort of touch each and every one of these departments. I thought it was very appropriate for me to be here as to assist in any way possible, but that's at your will. It's not, that I'm here and I'm running anything. I'm just a part of this body just to assist in at your service for whatever you need. But yes, all of them have been contacted, and they're very much aware of where the after-action review is being submitted to.
Now, when you receive these, or when someone receives these, whether it's your office or otherwise, after-action reports from these entities, and then they are logged on to the portal, those are public records, correct?
Yes, once they go to the committee, once they're sent into the portal, my only thoughts here, Chairman, is that I don't think anything should be released until after y'all review it. That's the purpose of the commission. So for us to release anything before you look at it and be able to give you a review, I think it would go against what this board is here for.
That makes sense.
So I think it should be kept as, and I guess that goes to more of the legal, Cindy, but because if we don't have a control of it, then that means all the data that comes in, so fire department submits their after-action review. If it's able to be given to any and everybody, so everybody will already draw their conclusion or take that story and run it, and you'll have multiple stories like the one you seen the other day, and I think it taints the whole process of what you guys are trying to accomplish. So my point of view is it should stay protected until you guys get a chance to at least look at it.
Do you suppose that that once the appropriate committee reviews the after-action report, after Investigator Quinn receives it and disseminates it, then at the next meeting, would it then be a public record for dissemination and comment?
I'm going to let the lawyer answer that.
The records would all be public records as soon as they are created. So even in draft form, if there's a request under the Public Records Act, as long as the underlying information doesn't have any separate confidentiality protection or provision, it would be public record. I think that if there is a request, it would be wise to explain they're being reviewed, they're going to be compiled with, explanation or comment or data or put into a concise form to the requester. But if there is a request and they still would like a copy of something in draft form, it is a public record.
My question, I have one question as well. So if we had an entity that was submitting an after-action review and it did have something in that was more in confidence or should not be viewed by everyone, how would you recommend that to be displayed or expressed from the agency's point of view?
I think I need to know maybe more specifically what it is you're talking about. So, if there is if it's a piece of information or document, et cetera, we could see if there is a confidentiality that would, a provision that would apply. So what we've talked about before, I think the main one is, contingency planning. So to the extent that it would show your
Exposures.
processes for going forward and what the plan is in the case of an emergency that may be confidential under state law. But I kind of would probably need to know specifically what it is and why it would need to be maintained as confidential, whether it's for any period of time or just for all the time. So maybe that it would be on a case-by-case basis what the information is, and that it needs to, whether it can be maintained as confidential.
Okay, that makes sense.
Ms.
Thank you.
Quinn has a question.
So anything that was protected, like an FBI report or OEM's planning process, just because it's on the portal doesn't mean it's public record. It would still have to go through that vetting process before it gets released.
That's correct. If there are records, like I said, if there is a specific, so there's the Public Records Act that in general, records related to government business are public. That's kind of the general understanding. But then there is, 1,000 exceptions that explain what makes it confidential. So things involved in pending criminal investigations, or there are protections for TBI records or FBI records, or like we said, contingency plans. If there's a statutory exception that says they're not public record, then they would not be public record, whether it's in the portal or in the hands of the fire department or the original agency. That is correct.
So I had a second clarifying question. Now that we've broken up into two committees, if these committees meet, that has to be public. That has to be in public, correct?
That is correct. You need to have a publicly noticed meeting of your, committee, or you shouldn't be discussing commission business via email. So I think what Mr. Summers, if I understand correctly, was trying to do, though, is maybe draw particular attention, people to focus on, certain reports as they come in, and then, somebody can report on them. But if my understanding correctly, the portal is going to be available to all the commission members. You can look at all the reports, and you should have that information. It's just that, you're going to focus on certain ones to kind of summarize to present to the group.
If they needed to meet, we could maybe arrange, like we on the policing commission, we had Zoom meetings that were live streamed that you could watch, or that could be recorded and then published. That would just need to be publicly noticed.
Correct. They would just need to be publicly noticed and publicly available. But that is, in general, though, now there aren't, while there were governor's orders that allowed for us to meet electronically for the last year, that expired at the end of last month. So
we
we
can't do
really
that.
should set up public meetings if the committee needs to meet to discuss. That would be the best way to go about it, and we can arrange for that.
Okay.
I envision that it's going to be pretty obvious whether or not this is a governmental or non-governmental issue. And I would defer to Investigator Quinn, and for my judgment as to if there is a question, then she might, when she disseminates, she says, this XYZ report from the ABC Commission appears to be non-governmental. Bottom line is this: I want all the members of the commission to have an input if we finally decide to vote on any type of after-action report that maybe is deficient. But I would expect that the governmental or the non-governmental committee as such would have particular emphasis on whether or not it is a governmental or a non-governmental report. Am I clear? Are there any questions? So we've got a procedure. Basically, Ms. Loney will send the after-action reports, or someone in your office will send the after-action report to the portal. Then after we receive the portal, Ms. Quinn then will disseminate it to all the members of the committee. And then at the next meeting, we will then discuss it. Clearly at the next meeting, if somebody wants a copy, they can have a copy, because it's clearly a matter of public record, and they can certainly wait until the fourth Tuesday in the month to get it. Because we don't know when we're going to get it. But the point is this: we're not going to make any decisions later on about any particular report until it's time to decide on all the reports as to which have deficiencies. Any questions?
And the agencies themselves will send those after action reviews directly to the portal.
Okay.
That way it keeps
That's
their
even
hands
better.
out of it.
That's fine. That's fine. Chief, you go ahead.
I'm sorry, say again. Go ahead and.
You're still on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Well, I think Kendra, our PIO, is going to take point from here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay. So just a few points of clarity. Recording Secretary Quinn will have to reach out to the agencies to kind of take over the communications with them. Our department has reached out to them initially for their timelines, which is what we're going to go over in just a moment. And they have been made aware that they are going to be requested to submit a narrative. But this commission is going to have to decide on a deadline for them to submit those narratives, and then they will be instructed on how to send those narratives directly to the commission or Recording Secretary Quinn so that you guys have access to them as they come in and can disseminate them how you see fit.
Give me an idea about what a reasonable time is.
I would recommend doing something sooner than later, just because they're already in the mind frame of working on this because they worked on their timelines. So I would say 30 days, maybe. But that, if you time it enough, maybe a little less would give you enough time to have those submissions by the next meeting. But that might not give you enough time to actually compile them in the way that you may want them to be compiled. But if you just want to receive raw data from those agencies, I would say that anytime prior to the next meeting, that would be a good deadline to get that data. Just might not be able to compile it if you're looking to compile it in a different format.
Before the end of this meeting, we'll decide on whether it's 25 days or 30 days.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the format for the reports, and maybe Fire can give us some advice on if we should have a specific format or a template that all of them submit the same kind of report, so it'll make it a little bit easier for us to review them. And if you could recommend, if there is a template or something that we could give to the agency so that we can have a uniform process.
I would definitely recommend that. Having received numerous timeline submissions, all of them were in various formats. None of them were uniform, and so it took a lot of time to compile it into the document that you see before you today. And so to reduce some of that, it would definitely be important to send a template along with your request for their narrative submission. And that template, we've kind of set the precedence for that to be in the format of the after action draft that you all got on the first meeting. That would just simply allow them to answer those questions in the order that they're presented in those sections on that draft. And each agency that we have reached out to has already been sent that draft multiple times. So, but you have the authorization to change that if that's not the format in which you want to receive it. But I assume that that's the format in which they would return it at this point. But that can all be changed. I also wanted to clarify, as far as Chairman Summers' question earlier regarding if all the agencies involved have been contacted, I would like to clarify that all the agencies that were listed in the list that you got last meeting have been contacted. Any agencies beyond that have not been contacted. So this would be a good time for you to review the timeline as well, see if you can identify any gaps or any agencies that you see that are not represented that you would like to add to that. This may be a time to follow up on the timelines as well and add those additional timelines. As far as the information that you all are able to see and have access to, there's been a Sharepoint portal that's set up for you. You all would have just received a link to that portal. Right now, you have access to view the folder,
And in that folder, you're going to see the electronic version of the timeline that you have in front of you. You will also see a folder called submissions, and that's going to be the raw data from each agency that made submissions in the form that they sent it in to me. You will also see a folder that has contact information. So that will give you the email addresses of those folks that submitted the timelines, and that's where I would start when reaching out for the narratives. And then you'll see an additional folder that has some extra, I say extra, but there are additional agencies that are not included in today's timeline. Those would be the Downtown Partnership and Box 55. I just received their submissions a little bit later, and so I wasn't able to include it in the document today. But just to go over the timeline very quickly, because I know it's a lot, it's a 42-page document, so this is a pretty in-depth timeline. You guys may see fit that you don't want all of these details, and so again, there is a form that can be edited in the Sharepoint portal, so whoever's gonna do the compilation of the final timelines and narratives can feel free to go in and edit and make changes as you feel. But it's very specific. It starts from the time that there was any notification of an incident on 2nd Avenue, and it will list the time that an agency responded, and then the very first couple of letters will be bolded, and that's going to indicate the agency that made that particular entry. So although that entry might reference some additional agencies, the one in bold is the one that made that entry. The other thing to note here is that all these times are approximate. Some agencies have very good tracking systems where they could input things, and others had to kind of approximate the times. And you'll notice that some of the time areas have asterisks, and those asterisks indicate that there was no specific time provided, and they were just kind of plugged into where it contextually made sense for that report. So again, this is a pretty in-depth look at what occurred on that day. I would recommend, like I said before, taking some time to kind of look through it and see if you guys see any gaps that you might want to ask particular questions to particular agencies regarding. But all the agencies that are included are on the front. And again, in that Sharepoint portal, you'll have access to all of those documents, and so you can compare, because there are some things that were not included in the document you see, but that did get submitted. And a lot of those are just going to be kind of repetitive things where maybe a specific search and rescue team went out from 8 a.m. to 4:30, but they listed every single address that they went to, up until January 22nd. And so we would have a 100-page document if we had all of those entries. So some of those things just were filtered down to say, USAR team performed search and rescue from 8 to 4:30 on some of those days in January, kind of when things were dying down a little bit. So are there any questions in regards to that document that I may help answer?
On the first page of that document that you're talking about, you have information contributors. Are these the entities that you contacted or somebody contacted that says we want after action, we request after action reports?
Correct. Everyone that's listed knows that a narrative is being requested of them.
On that front page?
Correct.
Right. Now, did we also contact a few of those entities, like, for example, the administrative office of the courts?
Did not.
All right. So we did not, the only people who were contacted were the people on the front page.
With the exception of Box 55 and the Downtown Partnership.
What was the first one?
Box 55, the rehab unit to support with food and drinks for the first responders.
Okay, so if we wanted other entities, whether they're governmental or non, I suspect that you've covered all the governmental entities.
Pretty
already.
much.
You don't?
I'm just making notes here that we don't have TBI or THP if they responded, or the Office of Homeland Security.
TBI was not involved. When we reached out to them, they did not have any direct involvement to this issue or to this incident. THP was contacted, but nothing was submitted. Office of Homeland Security was not contacted.
Okay.
We left that kind of with the FBI and to see if that would overlap at all, but they were not contacted directly.
We'll need to make two decisions: how to augment that number and who to augment it to, and secondly, whether it ought to be 25 days or 30 days.
Keep in mind, too, the question pertaining to what format you would want this information in. The information that we share with you at the beginning of this process, the same information that we share with all these agencies, was a format for them to send in the data that hopefully will answer the questions for you. Again, just from my point of view, I think if you look at that sketch that we gave you that showed your basic after-action review, I think that's a pretty good start. As a matter of fact, I think it should answer all your questions. I mean, if you want to change that, that's up to the board. But just keep in mind, as was just stated, there is going to be a lot of raw data that you'll receive, and it took a lot of work to even compile this. And it's to be expected, don't get me wrong. It's, when you look at most after-action reviews, that document will be several pages. This is just a timeline, but when you start receiving the information, particularly pertaining to each agency and what they did, that's why we sent and brought you the Office of Emergency Management's after-action review. Look at that one and judge from there. Is there something else that you would like to see, or it doesn't answer your questions before deciding to change the format? I mean, I think that would just be my advice, because again, it will be quite a bit of information, but it should answer all your questions. Thank you.
Got anything? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the work that you've done on compiling the timeline. It's helpful. Just for clarification, we need to add to this list, it sounds like, Downtown Partnership, Box 55 Rehab Unit, and THP as those that we need to reach out to. And Homeland Security will go with FBI, or is that what we're saying, for clarification?
That's the State Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, the State Department.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a separate.
Our Tennessee Homeland Security.
Okay, so that's a separate. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had those, the list of who we're reaching out to accurate.
And the court system, Administrative Office of the Courts.
And just for another point of clarity, as I was mentioning, the agencies, their entries sometimes reference other agencies. And so we had some particular agencies that I did reach out to that did not feel that they had enough information to contribute. And so even though they're not listed on here, their actions are listed in the timeline. So for example, and not to call anybody out, but just to draw your attention to it, there are a lot of entries where MNPD as well as OEM will make reference to things that were done by Public Works. Public Works did not submit a timeline, but as you go through this timeline, you will see very clearly where Public Works had their trucks cleaning up and making those type of efforts. And so those entries are in there, but they're just not from Public Works. Same thing, there will be mention of THP by MNPD, and whether or not they played a larger role in it other than what was mentioned for that entry is going to be up to the agency to decide what they will send in to you. But just wanted to make that point.
And to understand that, like Public Works, because they fall up under the Office of Emergency Management, we make a request, so they'll come out to actually do the sweep or whatever. So it would be very appropriate for them not to have an after-action review because it fell up under OEM.
Is that the same? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that the same with codes, Metro codes?
Exactly.
That also fall under?
Right, it will, but again, if, for instance, if Metro Codes is actually in here because their role was more in detail with inspections of the buildings for safety and then also occupancy probabilities. So that's why you see codes here, but they're actually in the information that the contributors to the after-action review. But like general services or the great example that Kendra gave would be, again, Public Works because of our request of them to do a sweep of the streets, cleaning the streets so that there will be, again, easier for just the the moving forward with the process of the cleanup. So that's why they didn't submit, but it was under our request.
Do you think that we should, Chief, do you think that this commission should develop a systematic template for submitting after action reports so that some reports maybe only might be 4 pages long and some might be 95 pages long?
Well, in my opinion, I think that the template that we submitted will actually do that for you. I think each agency, if they go off of what we submitted, it should be one that's very familiar to them. And that it will sort of answer the questions for you. And that way you don't have to, I'm not going to say get deeper in the process because that's not the appropriate word, but I think if you keep the process the way it is right now, they will give you a submission of, they'll give you a finished product similar to what the Office of Emergency Management had just given you. And from there, I think, Chairman, that'd be a good time. If it's not satisfying to you or don't answer the questions, that gives you the opportunity to invite them here. And that way, it just makes the process go a lot smoother than changing the whole format in general.
I agree with you. So the bottom line is that you've already given them a template or a guide. Let's see what they submit.
Absolutely.
And then after we see what they submit, then we'll decide if that's sufficient or not. Don't try to reinvent the wheel if it's rolling pretty good.
Excellent words.
Yes, sir.
If I could make a suggestion, I think we should send this template, but along with that, maybe a couple of questions for narrative added, because I don't see really any narrative in this report. So if we do want to have some narrative, maybe we submit with the template a couple of questions. And I don't know, we may need help coming up with those narrative questions, but just a suggestion, because the idea of having them submit something and then having to go back to get more information would just take longer. And so I'm trying to think of how we can try to include a request of everything that we think we might need, so that once they make that submission, we can go forward with the review, if that makes sense.
Yep. Anything further, Ms. Loney?
That is all, unless there is an additional question specifically for me. Everyone will have the link to the Sharepoint Portal. I will get with Recording Secretary Quinn individually to share with her some additional details about how to set that up if you guys want to continue to use that portal. Just to make it clear, it's not required that you use that portal. You can use a different system if you would like, whatever the commission comes up with, but that's just something that I set up to be able to share the information that we received with you all today so that you all could have it and begin your review.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Chief?
That's basically all I have for you. I would add, if you look at the after action review that was given, and I know you guys are just receiving it, so you haven't really had a chance to thoroughly go through it. But if you go to toward pages, I think 6, 9, 7, and 9. On the back, it gives you some of the, maybe a little bit more of the narrative points that you're looking for, where areas of opportunity, for instance, and then operational strengths, and sort of like doing a SWOT analogy, where they will actually give you what they felt like areas that were strength, areas of opportunities or improvement, and then operational strengths, areas of opportunities there as well. So if you look, I would say go through this thoroughly, and then from that point, you'll be able to answer your questions if you need to put any other things that need to be answered that you don't have before you. But again, you're just receiving this. So in a normal sense, you've already had the opportunity to read this. So I would just read it thoroughly, and then from there come up with your conclusion. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the fire chief? Yes, ma'am.
There's some that might need sort of a dictionary or a legend. There are a lot of acronyms that are used
Right.
in these reports. We may need some clarification on what the acronyms stand for.
Okay, absolutely.
And then I had a question for Cindy. Under what authority are we making these requests? Are they public records? Are they FOIAs? Are we empowered with subpoena power? How are we trying to solicit this information?
The ordinance establishing the commission did give you subpoena power, but my guess is that you won't need it and that you should make the request. You can send the ordinance to the agency explaining your role and ask for the information. And if they're not submitted, then we can discuss next steps.
Let me ask a question of our lawyer. And I've got enough sense, I'm a lawyer, but I got enough sense that I always follow my lawyer's advice because I don't want to be a client who's a fool. And so I realize that we're subject to the Public Records Act and the Open Meetings Law and all that, and we do the very best we can to comply with all those. But there's some areas that, like for example, to decide whether or not we give an after-action report time limitation of 25 days or 30 days. Do we have to make those kind of decisions in the open public every month or whenever we meet?
Yes, commission business should be discussed and decided within an open meeting.
So even if it's what about if we want to add questions like the commissioner suggested? Do we have to make those in an open meeting, or can we just use common sense and say, hey, we would like for you to amplify on whether or not you had enough team members to be able to respond properly? Do we have to make those decisions in the public?
I think for that particular issue, you could, as a group, decide you want to add a few questions and give the chairman the authority to draft the questions that will be sent with the request, and then you could make that decision outside of the meeting. But as far as weighing in and discussing what should happen via email, that's what you're not supposed to do.
All right. Well.
Could I?
Yes, sir, Captain.
That's what the SharePoint usually would entail if we have those type of questions, because it's on an open forum and we can make those inquiries in public, but to each other, and kind of maybe follow up or decide. If I'm not mistaken, that's kind of what the intent for the SharePoint.
I think my understanding is the SharePoint is literally just basically a place where the documents will be uploaded. So these after-action reports that are submitted by the agencies, it's going to be a site that you can go to pull up all of those and read them, but not a place that would, be available for discussion, but more a place where you can go to the different documents.
And I guess my suggestion then is to find some type of mechanism to place those type of inquiries. I know, for example, we use Teams for that type of communication. It's out there, everyone can go on and read it and come back and send those questions back and forth. Some type of mechanisms for that, because we might not be able to wait every 30 days when something comes up right then and there. Because I'm reading stuff right now, and I'm sure 3 or 4 days from now it'll hit me, and I'm not going to be able to table that question.
Commissioner.
Can we call a special meeting? Can we have enough time to review these documents and then just have a special meeting to come up with the questions?
I think it's appropriate. Let's look at the time frame here. According to my knowledge of the Public Records Act and the Open Meetings Law, this is our second official meeting.
Your second publicly noticed meeting, but your third meeting, yes.
That's correct. This is our second meeting. Our first one was just an organizational meeting, but we've had 2 meetings. We're supposed to respond back to the council within 1 year of our first meeting. This is our second meeting. Now, so that means we've got about 10 months left. We've got about 10 months left. We need to do it correctly, and we need to do it thoroughly, and we don't need to do it inadequately. We've been presented us with a lot of documents this morning that none of us has had time to look at and read, and just like the captain said, what I may read today, I may differ. I may have another opinion in about 4 or 5 days from now. So here's what I suggest. Our next meeting is June the 29th at 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. And we need to come up with decisions as to, first of all, we may get some after-action reports in the meantime. And so we'll then kind of know what different agencies are doing in response to the original template that was sent out to them. So what I would ask is that when those after-action reports come in, that our recording secretary then disseminate them to us as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Then when we come back in June, on June the 29th, then we make the following decisions. Number one, is the template adequate? We'll have enough information then to know whether the template is adequate. Number two, are there additional questions that need to be asked that weren't asked? And let's decide on what those questions are. Number three, let's decide which of the entities that have already sent us templates need to have a redo and need to send us another one. And number four, we will have a full decision on what other entities like the Administrative Office of the Courts need to be contacted and haven't been contacted, and then finally what the time frame will be for them to respond. 25 days, 30 days, or whatever. That would then put us into receiving all of the reports probably within the next 90 days. And then that would give us 6 months then before our suspense, I call it, got a military term, suspense date to report. That would give us six months or so for us to decide which of all of these after-action reports that we have reviewed are inadequate or need to have some questions answered, which ones aren't, and what witnesses do we need to call. I don't want to waste time, but at the same time, I don't want us to, right now, I've got a bunch of stuff in here. I have absolutely no idea what it says. And I don't think anybody else does. But let's just do it methodically. Let's be ready for next month's meeting on June the 29th at 10 o'clock in the morning, right here. And then finally decide how we're going to proceed for the future. Now, what I'd like to see as part of the June 29th meeting also would be, isn't there a video somewhere of the bombing, Chief?
When we were here last time, that was one of the questions I asked, could we get some video footage? And that's a little bit more difficult than we thought. There's a lot of video stuff out there in many pictures. So when we tried to obtain that, it was just so much data that we really didn't know how to proceed forward with presenting that to the committee. We were sort of hoping that the committee, because the last time we was here, I think there was a couple questions asked that we thought that probably once the after-action reviews came in and then try to format all this video footage would probably be a nice, tuck and tie at the end of it, because getting a lot of this stuff before, I don't know if it would not taint the after-action reviews or what have you, but just be confused with the media that people had. There was also people had footage with their cell phones that they were actually submitting to some of the news media. It was just hard to obtain all of that information. So I think from our perspective, Joseph Pleasant and Kendra, they were trying to come up with some way to summarize, I think, toward the end, if we could come up with some type of video of showing the footage from the perspective, a bird's eye view perspective, but just getting all that material is very difficult, especially even from the time that, we last met and formatting this time, the information that we gave you, it was just really overwhelming and wasn't able to, go forward with it. Not to mention, of course, they are the PIOs for fire and OEM. They're pretty busy. So it became a bigger task than what was expected. So
Think you could do it by, say, the third quarter of this year?
that's possible. What I'll do, to be fair, let me get with them and we'll come up with something and just get back to the board by next June the 29th. We'll have a somewhat of an answer for you, but I want to be fair to them because, again, we'll do whatever is asked, but I just understand that their role is tremendous in this point, especially right now. But we will come up with something that will hopefully satisfy the board.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to suggest the items that you just mentioned, if you specifically put them on the agenda for next month, I think that will help guide the commission and the discussion and, let everyone think beforehand.
I will do that.
And
what I plan to do at every meeting, God willing, and I don't forget, is that I will prepare a tentative agenda and send it to everybody within the next few days after the preceding meeting, like I did last time. I know I had an agenda, and I think it had 12 topics, and then our lawyer, Cynthia, said, I've already reported. Do I really need to report again? And I said, no, I guess you don't. So I deleted that part. So I'll send it in rough draft form. Now, and I will do my best. I will do my best to include all those topics that we're going to make decisions on. And by the way, in the meantime, I would appreciate, like, for example, Commissioner, you had some very relevant questions about if some of the reports don't answer this or don't answer that. Here's some other narrative questions. Let's come up with some of those narrative questions. We're not going to be making any decisions. We're just going to be on something to discuss. If you've got decisions about other agencies, whether they're non-governmental agencies or governmental agencies that need to be contacted, I invite the commission to think about those. So then when we come back on June the 29th, we're going to decide what committees what agencies have reported so far. Was the template adequate? Does it need to be embellished somewhat? As to other agencies that need to be contacted, what kind of time frame do they need to have? Should it be 25 days, 30 days, 60 days, or whatever? And then we'll make some hard decisions, and I will have them on the agenda, and I'll send that to you within the next week. Okay?
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I would take a moment to, before we close here, I want to have Joseph Pleasant, my PIO, come up just to give a quick depiction about the video part of this and how that will work, or some of the challenges we may have. And then also I want to just real quick, Ron Johnson from the mayor's office, he's our community safety coordinator. He's here this morning to represent the mayor's office. I wanted to make sure that we took a moment just to, again, announce that. And then, there he is, Mr. Johnson.
We're always glad to have you, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, he's.
And would you like to say anything?
No, I'm good. I'm just,
Glad you're here, sir. Mr. Pleasant,
Push that.
you have to push
There
enough
we go,
buttons so you
there we
get a
go.
red.
Luckily,
Get a
I've never
red, yeah.
been in this box before, so this is new for me. So the challenge with getting the video, I think, would be the commission would need to request the video from those different agencies. We do have video that's already in the public sphere. For example, MNPD put out video right after the incident showing the moments leading up to it. The challenge of trying to marry that with a timeline, the way it was suggested, is the timeline's not complete. I mean, today we just submitted a 45-page document that's initially showing you what happened. I think as that becomes more finalized, then you'll know some more of the kind of nuances you want. Because right now, all that we've seen is what's been in the media and what MNPD has released themselves. So the commission, I think, has the power to ask for other sources of video, whether it be downtown cameras. There is going to be a little bit of trickiness when it gets to the cell phone video and things like that. However, that can a lot of times be remedied by looking on social media. We have ways of finding that. But that was the challenge that we presented to Chief, was getting that video and being able to put it together in a way that we'd want it to show context for the commission was just not going to be possible given the fact that the preliminary timeline was still being compiled.
Sounds to me like you need a little bit more time.
We need a lot more time
How
sometimes.
how about the September meeting? That would be the end of the third quarter of 2021.
I will take that under advisement and not make a promise because I'm in the box. But no, I definitely think that gives us enough time to really work on finding those different sources of video. And if we do need the commission's help in obtaining that would also give us time to get with the commission and let y'all know that we need your help.
We don't need anything. We don't need anything elaborate. We've got a timeline, and we can kind of figure out. We're like everybody else. We like to see things. Mm-hmm. And so if you could give it to us, see the September meeting, September the 28th.
No, we could do that. The suggestion I believe that was made during the last meeting was actually taking that video, but then also overlaying it with the timeline as it went along with it.
Do the best you can.
Okay.
Do the best you can. Let's see something on September the 28th, if you could.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Can I get your first name?
My first name is Joseph.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a quick suggestion?
Yes, sir.
And this might be for you, Kendra. So with our documents of these submissions, I know we have two separate committees that are going to be reviewing them. Is it possible to break those down into those public and non-governmental and governmental agencies, just so that from a clerical perspective, it'd be easier for us to know what we're discussing? And then a second ask, if I think would be helpful, is we have X number of reporting agencies. Can we label them by a specific number, or so that we know that we're talking about number 15? It's going to be a lot of documents for us to go through, and I think having a specific number or letter attached to each submission would be helpful when we talk about the specific agency.
Yes, so to address the forthcoming submissions, I will not have my hands on those at all. Those will all be going through Recording Secretary Quinn. And so if that's the way that you guys prefer to have it formatted for you to view, she will have the ability to make those edits to the documents and save those with those specific suggestions. And then as far as the way that the information is disseminated, Sharepoint is set up where you can set up different folders, and you can literally have one that says governmental, non-governmental, and just put the appropriate documents in each one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good comment. Are there any other comments or questions or observations or recommendations? Thank you very much for all of your attention and for your attention to duty. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Chief. Thanks for the attendance of all of our legal help. We'll ask you a bunch of questions about the Open Meetings Law and the Public Records Act next month. All right. Thank you very much. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn? Time now is, Lord, it's 5 minutes after adjournment time. Do I hear a motion we adjourn? So moved. Any objection? We are adjourned until 10 o'clock. June the 29th, 2021, this same room. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.